They say small towns are safe. They say nothing ever happens here, but that is not true. I have seen the darkness that waits behind closed doors, the shadows that linger in corners, the silence that hides something alive. My name is Daniel Mercer, and I have been a police officer in my hometown in northern Wisconsin for 12 years. I have dealt with petty crimes, drunken fights, and lost children. I have seen accidents, domestic disputes, and fraud. But nothing prepared me for what happened at the Wren house. It was a cold October evening, the kind where fog rolls over the fields like a living thing. The call came just before midnight. At 10:98, a report of someone screaming inside the old Wren estate, a house abandoned for over 30 years. The dispatcher, a new girl named Clara, sounded tense over the radio. I grabbed my coat and flashlight and drove down the winding road toward the mansion. The trees pressed against the road, their branches scratching the windshield as if warning me to turn back. The fog made everything look unreal, twisted. Shadows moved in ways they shouldn't. My pulse was already racing. When I arrived, the house looked worse than I expected. Windows were broken, doors hanging from hinges, the paint long peeled away. There was something almost alive about it, a feeling of being watched. I stepped out of the cruiser, flashlight in hand, and called for my partner, Lewis, who had arrived a few minutes before. He nodded silently, gripping his flashlight and his service pistol. We approached the porch slowly. The screaming had stopped. In its place was a faint scratching sound, coming from inside, almost like claws on wood. We entered through the front door. The smell hit us first, a mix of rot and mildew, something metallic beneath it, like old blood. The living room was covered in dust, but there were footprints in the dirt on the floor. Fresh footprints, small, dragging, leading toward the staircase. Lewis and I exchanged glances. This was not a homeless person squatting. This was something else, something deliberate. As we ascended the stairs, the air grew colder. My breath fogged in front of me. There was a whispering sound, a low voice, repeating words I could not understand. The bedrooms upstairs were mostly empty, except for one. A child's room, perfectly preserved, as if the years had frozen it. A small bed, toys scattered on the floor, a doll with its face scratched off. The scratching sound grew louder, now coming from the closet. Lewis motioned for me to cover him. I held my flashlight steady, hands trembling slightly, and pushed the closet door open. Nothing was there. The closet was empty, except for a mirror leaning against the wall. In the reflection, I saw something that made my stomach drop. Behind me, a figure in the shadows, pale skin, black eyes, staring. When I turned, there was nothing, just the empty hallway. My radio crackled, Clara's voice, distant and shaky. She said she saw something on the security cameras at the station. A child, standing behind me in the footage, eyes wide, staring, unmoving. The footage was live. There was no child in the house when we entered. Lewis and I ran down the stairs, but the doors slammed shut before we could reach them. Windows rattled violently. The air was thick, pressing against us, making it hard to breathe. By the time we forced a window open and escaped, the sun was rising. When we returned with backup, the house was quiet again. No footprints, no signs of struggle, not even the mirror. The child's room was empty, as if it had never existed. The Wren house was locked from the inside, sealed by its own shadows. Residents of the town whispered about it for years, calling it cursed, haunted, avoided. People claimed they heard whispers when walking by, crying children at night, lights turning on inside when the house was empty. I never returned there, but sometimes, when I'm alone, I hear that voice again. The scratching, the whispering, the silent gaze from behind the mirror. Some nights I wake up and feel a small hand on my shoulder. I turn, and nothing is there. Yet I know I am not alone. There are things that wait, patient in the silence. Watching, waiting for those who dare to look too closely. And in a small town where nothing is supposed to happen, I have learned that the darkness is always closer than you think. It starts slowly, with shadows stretching where they should not. In the corner of my room, a dark shape hovers, unmoving, almost breathing. The air thickens, carrying a metallic taste like iron mixed with rot. I hear whispers, not words, but syllables that claw at the edges of my mind, slipping into thoughts I never had. When I blink, I catch glimpses of movement in the hallway, fleeting, impossible to trace. Sometimes I see a figure standing outside my window, pale and silent, staring as if it knows the exact moment I will notice. The dreams began first. I would fall asleep and find myself back in the Wren house, the floors rotten beneath me, walls twisting like flesh. The rooms were no longer the same. They were alive, breathing slowly, contracting around me, pressing me into shadows. The child's room appeared again, but the toys were rearranged, forming shapes that looked like faces screaming silently. The closet door creaked open, and in the mirror, hundreds of faces stared back. Faces that were mine, distorted, screaming silently. I would wake up drenched in sweat, my heart hammering, only to find the house completely still. Yet I knew it had followed me. One night, I awoke to the sound of laughter, soft and childish, echoing through the empty house. It circled me, whispering secrets I could not understand, yet I felt their meaning in every nerve. The air seemed to hum with anticipation, vibrating against my skin. I tried to leave the bed, but the floor was sticky, as if the darkness itself had grown roots through the wood. My hands touched something soft, cold, almost wet. I pulled them back. Blood? Mud? Or something worse? I could not tell, but the smell clung to me, iron and decay. The scratches on the walls grew. They were not random. They formed patterns, symbols that writhed when I looked at them too long, shapes that seemed to twist into faces, eyes opening and closing, mouths whispering. Sometimes I would see small figures in the corners of my vision, disappearing when I tried to focus. Tall and thin, with elongated limbs, always just out of reach. Their movements were impossible, unnatural, like they were breaking physics itself to follow me. I heard their footsteps in the attic, pacing above me, slow, deliberate. Yet when I climbed the stairs, nothing awaited but dust and shadows. I started to hear things in the silence, soft murmurs, the faint dragging of feet across the floor, whispers calling my name from inside the walls. Objects moved by themselves. Books fell from shelves, doors creaked open, mirrors reflected things that were not there. The child appeared occasionally, standing at the foot of my bed, silent, watching. Its eyes were black voids, its skin pale and cracking, lips moving without sound. It beckoned me with a trembling finger, and every time I looked away, I felt an overwhelming sense of dread, as if something else had entered the room with me. Sleep became a battlefield. I could not close my eyes without being pulled into the Wren house. Every night, the house grew more grotesque, its corridors stretching endlessly, rooms folding into themselves. The mirrors multiplied, hundreds of them, reflecting versions of me that screamed, twisted and bled silently. I could hear whispers of others trapped inside, voices begging, crying, laughing madly. I realized the house was not just a place. It was a living prison, feeding on fear, shaping reality around it, bending time and space. Even during the day, the terror followed me. Shadows flickered unnaturally, forming grotesque faces before vanishing. I saw glimpses of the Wren house in reflections, in windows, in pools of water. Sometimes my reflection would move differently, smiling when I did not, tilting its head, reaching out to touch the glass from the other side. Strangers in the street would glance at me strangely, their eyes dark and hollow, whispering in a language I could not understand. My dreams and waking hours merged. I began to question what was real. I could feel the child's hand on my shoulder, even when the room was empty, and hear its whispers in the quietest moments. Letters appeared under my door. No envelopes, just single sheets of yellowed paper with childlike handwriting. The words made no sense at first. Symbols and scribbles, then slowly, sentences forming. They spoke of waiting, of hunger, of darkness that never sleeps. The last letter I found said simply, "We are all behind the mirrors." And when I looked into the mirror across my room, I swore I saw a dozen pale faces pressed against it, eyes black and wide, mouths moving silently. From that night on, the mirrors in my house felt alive. Every reflection seemed slightly delayed, as if the world inside the glass was thinking before imitating me. Sometimes my reflection blinked when I did not. Sometimes it smiled faintly, even when my face was frozen in terror. The glass felt colder each day, as though something on the other side pressed its forehead against it, waiting. The scratching sounds returned, louder, more desperate. They no longer came from behind the walls, but from behind every reflective surface in the house. The bathroom mirror rattled at dawn, vibrating violently as if something wanted out. My bedroom mirror clouded with breath, though the room was freezing. Words were written in the fog, slowly, deliberately, as if a finger dragged across the glass from the other side. The message said, "Let us in." At night, the darkness inside the mirrors deepened, swirling like thick smoke. I began seeing shapes moving behind the glass, pacing, shifting, bending in impossible ways. Tall silhouettes with elongated arms, crawling forms with too many joints, and always behind them, the child, motionless, watching, waiting. Its eyes were not empty, they were aware. I covered every mirror, but the scratching continued. Sheets trembled, blankets slid off on their own, and sometimes the cloth bulged outward as if fingers were pushing against it. One night, I woke to find every covering torn down neatly, folded at my feet. All the mirrors were uncovered again, all of them fogged with breath from the inside. The whispers did not stop. They grew louder, layered, dozens of voices speaking at once, children laughing, women crying, men mumbling prayers backwards. Footsteps echoed through my hallway at night, never rushing, never running, always slow, steady, patient, as if they knew I was listening, as if they wanted me to. One evening, while I stood in the kitchen trying to convince myself I was still sane, I heard a soft tapping behind me. When I turned, every cabinet door was slightly ajar, forming a perfect line. Inside each one, carved into the wood, was the same symbol from the letters, a circle with 3 vertical lines cutting through it. I touched one carving. It was warm, almost pulsing. Sleep became impossible. Whenever I began to drift off, the room shifted, the air thickened, a cold pressure weighed on my chest. I saw silhouettes gathering at the foot of my bed, dozens of them, all with the same black eyes. Their bodies twitched unnaturally, like puppets pulled by invisible strings. They leaned closer until their faces hovered inches from mine. Yet when I reached for the lamp, they vanished, leaving only the smell of damp earth and rust. One night, I heard whispering louder than ever before. It came from every corner of the room. Words finally formed, not in my ears, but inside my skull. They spoke of release, of breaking the thin barrier between our world and theirs. They said the house never let go, that once I stepped inside the Wren estate, a part of me remained trapped there, and now, whatever lived there wanted the rest of me. I tried to leave town, but the moment I crossed the outskirts, the road twisted. Fog swallowed everything. My car engine died without explanation, and in the reflection of the rearview mirror, I saw the child standing in the back seat, staring directly at me. I did not turn around. I could not. I closed my eyes, and when I opened them again, I was back in my driveway, engine off, key still in my trembling hand. The house no longer feels like mine. The corners shift, the lights flicker, shadows stretch far longer than they should, crawling toward me even when I stand still. I hear breathing behind me in empty rooms. My reflection watches me sleep. Sometimes its eyes are open while mine are closed. The letters still appear, more now, dozens each morning, all with the same message. It is time. And every night the faces in the mirrors grow closer, their hands press harder, their mouths move faster, and the child no longer just watches, it smiles. If you are hearing this, remember one thing. Shadows hold memories, mirrors hold doors, and some doors were never meant to open before the darkness takes everything from me. Subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell so this story reaches more people before it reaches for you.